I have two individual still photographs taken from the UCLA surveillance video. May these be marked People's 203 and 204, respectively?
Yes. Can I see? Being shown to Mr. Chernoff.
Okay, we're showing you People's 203. Do you recognize in this photograph a detective Porsche appears to be walking past Dr. Murray? And this is, for the record, this is dated June 25th at 3:27 in the afternoon. Do you recognize Detective Porsche?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And is this Dr. Murray in these pants and white T-shirt that you previously identified as exiting the building in a different video clip?
Yes.
And going to People's 204, again, is this Dr. Murray in the same white T-shirt and loose pants as shown in the video and People's 203?
Yes, it is.
I have another photograph, Your Honor, a color photograph of Conrad Murray and security upon arrival at UCLA. May this be marked People's 205 for identification.
Yes.
Showing you People's 205 detective. Again, does this show Dr. Conrad Murray in the same white shirt and pants as you identified in the surveillance video of UCLA?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and do you recognize this area as the ambulance bay where RA 71 arrived at UCLA?
Yes, I do.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have nothing further.
Mr. Walgren, thank you. Cross-examination? Yes, Mr. Chernoff? Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Detective Smith, hello. How are you?
Morning.
Good morning.
Good, sir.
We heard in the audio the tape, and we also remember from your testimony last week that attempts had been made to contact Dr. Murray that evening. Is that right?
The evening of June 25th, 2009. That's correct. Yes, sir.
And you heard that I believe somebody said in the audio tape that the messages went to voicemail, or voicemail immediately went to voicemail. Is that what occurred when the contacts were made?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You did not yourself attempt to contact Dr. Murray, is that right?
That's correct.
It was Detective, is it Porsche? Is it Porsche?
Detective Porsche and then ultimately Detective Martinez.
Right. Detective Porsche was the one who tried to contact Dr. Murray that evening on June 25th, 2009. Is that right?
While at the hospital, yes,
Right.
sir.
And it was Detective Porsche that Dr. Murray left his contact information with.
That's correct.
Right. In fact, Dr. Murray's entire experience with police officers at the scene, or at least police officers he spoke with, was Detective Porsche's and Detective Binky. Is that right?
That's correct.
We see in the video lots of things, but we don't see you in any of these surveillance videos. Do you? Are you in these surveillance videos? I might have missed it.
I didn't notice myself, no.
Okay. And we see that Dr. Murray in one of the surveillance videos walked outside the emergency room, and you showed us last week, I believe, another surveillance video showing outside of UCLA. Do you remember that testimony?
Him walking out of the hospital, yes.
Now, you understand that the west lobby of UCLA is at some point connected to the emergency room. You have to go through a bunch of buildings, but you can get to the west lobby. Is that right?
Yes.
But another way to do that is to just simply walk outside and walk to the west lobby. Right?
That's correct. Exit the emergency room doors and then walk into the west lobby, yes.
And in fact, you saw the surveillance video of Dr. Murray in that west lobby.
Yes, I did.
Okay. Now, one of the things that we had heard on the audio tape and was that Dr. Murray was helping the family with the press release. You heard him say that on the audio tape. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
You do know that there was actually a press release that was issued by the family through Jermaine Jackson that late afternoon.
Yes.
All right. And were you aware that release, that press conference, so to speak, was done in the west lobby, the west section of UCLA?
I had no idea where it was done at.
Are you familiar with a man named Amir Rubin, Dan Amir Rubin, who was... Have you heard of him?
No.
Do you know who runs communications at UCLA?
I do not. I didn't do any of the follow-up there to obtain video.
Let's talk about the circumstances prior to Dr. Murray's statement. I realize that it was you and Orlando Martinez, Detective Orlando Martinez, that were essentially primarily assigned to this case. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you said that Portia is the first one that attempted to contact Dr. Murray, Detective Portia.
Detective Porche, yes, sir.
And then you're familiar with the fact that sometime in the next morning, this would be the 25th was a Thursday. Is that right?
Yes, it was.
Okay. So sometime the next morning on the 26th, which is a Friday, that Attorney Michael Pena actually called Detective Porche. You know that.
I do not know that.
Do you recall that Detective Porche told Mr. Pena to contact Orlando Martinez?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's what you understand. That's what Michael Pena did.
Yes.
Right. And you're familiar with the fact that the substance of that conversation with Orlando Martinez is, we want to come in and talk to you, right?
That's correct.
But Michael Pena, you knew at that time, was in Houston, Texas.
I had no idea where he was.
Well, that was made clear to Orlando Martinez that he had to fly in from Houston, Texas.
That may have been. I wasn't aware of that.
Were you aware that Michael Pena and Orlando Martinez actually set this appointment up for 2 o'clock on the 27th?
Yes.
It was actually moved to 4.
That's correct.
You guys moved it to 4.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we were prepared to do it 2 hours earlier, but you had some things to do and you had to move it.
We had to have some search warrants signed. Yes, sir.
Now, prior to the interview with Dr. Murray, let's go over some of the things that you had already done. Okay? You had already visited the house twice, Carrollwood. Is that right?
Oh, I'm sorry. When are we talking about? On what
All right.
date?
All right. Let's go from prior to 4 o'clock on June 27th. You had already performed some investigations in this case.
Yes, sir.
You had visited Carrollwood, 100 Carrollwood, already twice.
That's correct.
Once on the 25th, right?
Yes.
Once on the 26th.
Yes, sir.
During that period of time, you had the ability to survey the area, take a look at what was out and about in the area in both rooms, right?
Yes.
Photos were taken.
Yes.
Evidence was collected.
That's correct.
You had already spoken with Alberto Alvarez, right?
Initially, yes.
And there was more than one investigator at the hospital, more than one detective at the hospital, right?
Yes.
And after the hospital, you went to Carrollwood. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And at Carrollwood residence, there was more than one detective as well.
That's correct.
So let's go over all of the statements that were taken on the 25th and 26th. You spoke with Alberto Alvarez, you've testified, right?
That's correct.
Fahim Muhammad was also spoken with, right, at
Yes.
Carrollwood. The statement was taken from Fahim Muhammad, right?
That's correct.
Michael Amir had already been spoken with,
Yes.
and this was at Carrollwood as well,
Yes, sir.
right? We spoke with Larry Tolbert, security guard.
He was spoken to. Yes,
right?
sir.
The nanny, Rosalind Muhammad, that she was spoken to.
Yes.
Kai Chase was spoken to.
Correct.
Both of the housekeepers were spoken to,
Yes.
right? You had spoken to some of the family members. Is that right?
I had not.
Well, some detectives had, right?
Yes.
Let me see if I'm missing someone here. Larry Muhammad, he was spoken to, right? He was another security guard.
I believe so.
Surveillance videos, you'd already had SID. By the way, what is SID?
Scientific Investigation Division.
Okay. They had been out to the house on the 25th.
That's correct.
They downloaded surveillance tapes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You had, by the 27th, by the time you spoke to Dr. Murray, you had already received a copy of the 911 log, right?
I believe we may have. Yes.
Okay. And we've already heard that you collected some medications. You had actually we had a list of medications that you were going over with Dr. Murray. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, during the conversation, other than Mr. Pena and myself asking you to come to the hotel that we were staying at for the interview, did we make any limitations on the questions you could ask?
No, sir.
Did we at any point say to you, well, that's a subject we're just not going to go into?
No, sir.
Did Dr. Murray make any statement about things he didn't want to talk about?
No, he did not.
All right. Any question was wide open for you to ask. Is that right?
That's correct.
And there was no limitation on the time that we were there?
That's correct.
You could have been there all night if you needed to. We
Yes,
didn't
sir.
say we got to go, right?
That's correct.
There was no point during the conversation with Dr. Murray did he need some private conversation with his lawyers.
That's correct.
And you know what I mean by that, right?
Yes.
Because you actually were present when you spoke with Michael Amir Williams. Is that right? Did you interview Michael Amir Williams on August 31st, 2009?
Yes.
And you remember when he had to leave the room with his lawyer for a private conversation? Remember that?
Vaguely, yes.
But Dr. Murray didn't do that.
That's correct.
Now, you have been I don't remember if you said you've been in homicide, robbery homicide. Is that it? How long has it been classified as robbery homicide, or is that a new division?
Robbery homicide?
Yeah, I mean,
I believe its inception was back in the 70s sometime, mid-70s.
And you've been part of robbery homicide for how long?
Approximately year and a half.
Year and a half. And you have been, prior to robbery homicide, you were a detective in what division? What department?
Is at Hollenbeck Division, where I worked homicide for approximately 10 years.
And prior to working homicide, where were you working at that time? Where were you assigned, I guess?
Prior to Hollenbeck homicide,
Yes.
I was assigned down to 77th Division.
How long have you been working